Okay, let's unpack this. I want you to picture something for a second. You walk into a room, maybe it's a high-stakes meeting, maybe it's a party where you don't know anyone, and you just instantly get a vibe from someone. You just feel it. Or, you walk into an old house and the hair on your arms stands up.
It's a universal experience, right? We usually just write it off as intuition, maybe instinct.
Mm-hmm.
Or if we're feeling a little mystical, we start talking about, energy or auras.
Exactly. It's filed under unexplainable stuff. But here's where it gets really, really interesting. What if I told you that vibe isn't magic? What if it's just, well, biology, and not just any biology, but a very specific, measurable electromagnetic function of your nervous system, one that the government has been studying and mapping for decades.
And that is the absolute core of the stack of documents we're looking at today. I have to say, this deep dive is going to challenge a lot of assumptions. We're looking at a convergence of things that, they just don't usually sit at the same table. We're talking ancient spiritual concepts, hardcore neuroscience, and advanced military technology.
It is such a wild mix. We've got papers here from the National Institutes of Health, the NIH. We've got press releases from DARPA, which is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. We have technical papers on something called wireless body area networks.
Mm.
And the big theme, the thread tying it all together, is this concept of biofield physiology.
Right. And our mission for this deep dive is pretty specific. We need to decode how your central and your peripheral nervous systems, the CNS and PNS, how they actually create an electromagnetic field, how that field redefines what we even think of as human anatomy, and maybe most importantly, how agencies like DARPA are developing tech to not just read that field, but to write to it.
Write to it. That's the part that just sounds like pure sci-fi. But according to these sources, the goal is to potentially replace traditional drugs with what they're actually calling electrical prescriptions.
It's a fascinating and, frankly, maybe a slightly unnerving concept. But before we get to the futuristic military tech, we really have to ground this in the biology. We need to look at that first part of our stack, the biofield itself.
Let's do it. Let's dive in. Because one of the key documents here is a 2015 paper from the NIH. And it basically just comes right out and declares biofield physiology, a viable scientific discipline.
It does, and that is a huge shift in language. I mean, for a long time, if you talked about an energy field around the body, you'd be laughed out of the lab. But this paper argues that what we used to dismiss as, woo or spiritual is actually just a placeholder term for anatomy we just hadn't fully mapped out yet.
Okay, this is the part that blew my mind.
Yeah.
One of our sources explicitly translates the spiritual terms into biological ones. It's like a Rosetta Stone for, woo versus wetware.
Right.
So when people talk about auras,
they're likely referring to the electromagnetic field generated by the entire nervous system and, crucially, the heart. It's not some mystical halo. It's just an emergent property of all the electrical activity in your body. I mean, basic physics tells us wherever you have an electrical current, you have a magnetic field. Your body is full of current. Therefore, you have a field.
And then there's chakras. Now, this is where people usually picture like spinning wheels of colorful light. But the mapping in these documents is so literal.
It really is. If you actually look at where the chakras are traditionally placed on the body, they correspond almost perfectly to the positioning of major internal organs and, more importantly, major nerve bundles, these things called ganglia.
Ganglia? Aren't those like the routers of the nervous system?
Exactly, they're processing hubs. And those areas also happen to have the heaviest traffic of blood flow, major veins, major arteries. So a chakra in this context isn't some spiritual vortex. It's a biological node, a concentration of electrochemical data.
And what about meridians, like the lines they use in acupuncture?
The central and peripheral nervous systems. The argument here is that these ancient systems were essentially early maps of the body's electrical wiring. They just used different words because they didn't have electron microscopes.
So it's not invisible magic. It's visible, or at least measurable hardware.
Precisely. And the documents really emphasize this isn't hypothetical. We measure this stuff every single day. You go to a hospital and get an EEG. You're measuring brainwaves, electrical activity. You get an ECG. You're measuring the electrical rhythm of the heart.
There was also a mention of something called ultra-weak photon emissions, which sounds like it's from a comic book.
Biophotons, yes. And this is established science. Cells actually emit light. It's very, very faint. You can't see it with the naked eye, but it is measurable. So when you take all of that, the brain's electrical signals, the heart's magnetic field, the static from your muscles, these biophotons, you get a dynamic, multimodal field around the body. That is the biofield.
And the heart is the big boss in all this, right? I remember reading that the heart's field is just massive compared to the brain.
It's the loudest generator, by far. One source notes the heart's electrical signal is about 60 times greater in amplitude than the brain's, and the magnetic field is thousands of times stronger. You can measure it several feet away from the body.
Which brings us right back to that vibe in the meeting room. If I'm standing 3 feet away from you, I'm literally standing inside your heart's magnetic field.
Exactly. And this leads to this idea of whole body coherence, which you can actually detect through something called heart rate variability, or HRV. When you feel good vibes from someone, you might just be picking up on a coherent magnetic broadcast. When someone feels off, their broadcast might be chaotic.
Okay, so if this field is real and it's just the output of our nervous system,
Yeah.
we need to understand the hardware. Because I feel like most of us, myself included, we know we have nerves, but we don't really think about the wiring diagram.
It's worth a quick refresher because this is the exact mechanism that DARPA is so interested in hacking. You have two main parts, the central nervous system, the CNS, that's your command center, the brain, and the spinal cord.
The CEO and the main trunk line. Got it.
Right. And then you have the peripheral nervous system, the PNS. This is the information superhighway. It's all the nerves that branch out from the spine to the rest of the body, your organs, your skin, your limbs. This is the interface between you and the world.
And within that peripheral system, you've got the autonomic nervous system. I always remember, autonomic sounds like automatic. It does the stuff I don't have to think about.
That's the best way to remember it. Breathing, heart rate, digestion. And it's split into two teams. You have the sympathetic nervous system.
Fight or flight.
Correct. Dilates your pupils, speeds up the heart, dumps adrenaline, gets you ready to run or to brawl. And then you have the parasympathetic.
Rest and digest.
Exactly. Slows things down, handles maintenance, repair. Now, here's the crucial rule of biology. This is all supposed to be involuntary. You can't just decide to dilate your pupils. You can't just sit there and think, okay, adrenaline dump now.
Right. I can't command my liver to process faster.
Usually no. But the source material brings up this really sticky little detail, a phenomenon called voluntary piloerection.
Which is just a fancy scientific way of saying giving yourself goosebumps on command.
Yes. Now be honest. Can you do it? Can you sit there right now and just force goosebumps to appear on your arm?
I'm trying. I'm really trying, squeezing my brain. No, nothing. If I recall a really embarrassing memory, maybe, or hear a specific song, but just as a mechanical action, no way.
Most people can't. It's typically a sympathetic, totally involuntary response. But the sources point out that some people can consciously trigger the erector pili muscles, those tiny muscles at the base of your hair follicles.
Okay, but why does that matter? In the context of biofields and DARPA, I mean, it just seems like a weird party trick.
It matters because it breaks the rule. It serves as a concrete physical proof of concept for the mind-body connection. It shows that there's a bridge where the conscious mind, the software, can actually log in to the autonomic system, the hardware.
So if a person can naturally hack their own autonomic system to create a physical change,
then it stands to reason that an external system could do the same thing. The sources suggest this ability is often linked to a high emotional capacity or a sense of awe. It's a physical manifestation of this whole biofield concept, that the software can drive the hardware in ways we just don't fully appreciate, and if that wiring is there, it can be accessed.
Okay, so we have the hardware, we have the field it generates. Now let's talk about the people who want to tap into that wiring. This is where we get into the DARPA stack. Specifically, a program called Electric Racks.
Right, short for electrical prescriptions. This was launched around 2015, and the language in the press release is just incredibly revealing. They aren't hiding what they're doing at all.
No, they really aren't. They explicitly state the goal is to develop a closed-loop system to treat disease by modulating the activity of peripheral nerves.
Think about what closed loop really means. It means a system that monitors you, detects a problem, and applies a fix, all potentially without you doing a thing. It completely removes the user from the equation.
So instead of taking a pill, you just get a signal.
Exactly. The analogy they use is a pacemaker. A pacemaker monitors the heart and, zaps it. If the rhythm goes off, it's automatic. DARPA wants to do that for the immune system or for mental health. They call it neuromodulation.
So let's play this out. Let's say I have rheumatoid arthritis, which is an inflammatory disease. My body is attacking itself. Instead of taking an anti-inflammatory drug,
The system, maybe a tiny implant, maybe a wearable, would detect the inflammation markers in your biofield. Then it would stimulate specific nerves, say, the vagus nerve, to tell your spleen to just stop producing those inflammatory chemicals.
That sounds actually kind of amazing. No side effects from drugs, precise targeting.
Oh, the potential benefit is huge. Chronic pain, PTSD, depression, all these inflammatory diseases, these are the target conditions. And they funded some really heavy hitters to figure it all out.
Yeah, I saw that list. MIT, Columbia, University of Texas. The MIT project sounded like something straight out of a Marvel movie.
Right. The MIT team was looking at magnetic nanoparticles. So imagine injecting these tiny microscopic particles into your bloodstream that are designed to latch onto specific neurons. Then you apply an external magnetic field to heat those particles up just slightly.
And the heat is what activates the neuron.
Exactly, it's thermal activation. But it's totally wireless. You don't need a wire touching the nerve, you just need the magnetic field. It's incredibly precise.
And UT Dallas was working on vagal nerve stimulation for PTSD. Basically, trying to use electricity to induce neural plasticity to help the brain unlearn fear.
It's rewiring in the most literal sense possible. They are using the peripheral nervous system as, and this is a direct quote, a medium for delivering therapy. They see our nerves not just as body parts, but as user interface.
But, and there is always a but, with this stuff, this requires a level of access to the body that goes way, way beyond a Fitbit. I mean, if you have a user interface, you can have a hacker. And that leads us to the next section of the stack, the networked human.
This is where the sources shift from the medical potential to the surveillance reality. We have documents here describing WBANs wireless body area networks.
The diagrams for this are just wild. It shows a human body just covered in these little dot sensor nodes. You've got sensors on the heart, glucose sensors, movement sensors.
And all of those sensors talk to what they call a sync. Usually that's your smartphone. And the smartphone talks to the remote medical server. It creates this continuous, unbroken stream of data from your biology straight to the cloud.
And one of the papers in our stack has a title that just sent a chill down my spine.
Yeah.
The Hunter.
The Hunter. Tracking randomly moving WBAN targets. It's a 2014 IE paper, and it discusses exactly how to track these body networks.
Tracking targets. That does not sound like healthcare language to me. That sounds like military language.
It is. The paper is technical, sure. It's about how to maintain a signal lock on a moving person. But the implications are crystal clear. If you are wearing a network of sensors, you are a beacon. This technology stole biology. The critique is that terms like bioelectronic medicine and precision AI healthcare are really just euphemisms.
Euphemisms for what?
For remote administration rights to the human nervous system. If your immune system can be managed by a closed-loop electrical system who controls the loop, her concern is that citizens are essentially being logged into via these sensors.
It's the idea that your body becomes a managed service, like biology as a service. You don't own the code anymore.
And the consent issue here is huge. The argument is that by participating in this whole smart health ecosystem, you are effectively waiving your right to biological privacy. The system needs to read your biofield, your data, to treat you. But once that data is readable, it's also trackable.
We're not just talking tracking location. We're tracking your internal state, your heart rate, your stress levels, your neural activity.
Precisely. If auras are just electromagnetic fields, and we have sensors that can read those fields, then your aura is now data that can be uploaded to a server. It can be intercepted. It can be analyzed by an AI.
That is heavy.
Yeah.
But we need to look at where this is all going now, because these papers aren't just from 2015. We have sources from 2024 and looking ahead to 2025.
We do. There's a DARPA Biological Technologies Office solicitation from September 2024. They are actively seeking proposals for continuous physiology monitoring and human-machine interfaces.
And prediction engines.
Yeah.
They want to predict what the body's going to do next.
That's the next frontier. Not just reacting to disease, but predicting it based on the biofield data. They want algorithms that know you're getting sick or getting depressed before you even consciously realize it yourself.
And what's so interesting is we're seeing a pivot in mainstream psychiatry, too. There was that article, Energy Work in Psychiatry, dated December 2025.
It talks about how mainstream psychiatry is now seriously considering how to promote a healthy biofield. They're looking at things like EEG bands and heart coherence not as some alternative medicine, but as core metrics for mental health.
So the line between the woo we talked about at the beginning, Reiki, therapeutic touch, and hard neuroscience, that line is basically gone.
It's blurring incredibly rapidly. The science has validated the mechanism. We know the field exists. We know it affects health. We know it can be modulated. So the question is no longer, is it real? The question is, how do we use it?
Or who uses it on us.
Exactly.
So what does all this mean for us? For the people listening to this right now, it feels like we're standing on the edge of a cliff.
I think it means we have to update our definition of self. You aren't just flesh and bone. You are an electromagnetic broadcaster. Your nervous system is both an antenna and a transmitter.
And we're moving into a world where that broadcast is becoming part of the public network.
It is. The biofield is the interface, and DARPA saw this decades ago. They realized that if you can control the signals on the peripheral nervous system, you can control the body's output, healing, emotion, inflammation, everything.
It's the ultimate biohack.
It really is. We are moving into an era of wireless drugging. That's a term from the source commentary, and it just fits perfectly. Modulating nerves via a signal rather than a chemical.
It's exciting because it could cure things that are currently incurable.
Yeah.
Imagine turning off PTSD with a switch. But it's terrifying because, well, hackers.
And administration. If your nervous system is a network that can be logged into for healing, who holds the administrative keys? Are we patients being cured, or are we just nodes being managed?
That is the question, and I really don't think we have the answer yet.
And that leads to a final provocative thought I'd like to leave everyone with.
Let's hear it.
We talk a lot about cybersecurity, protecting our laptops, our phones, our bank accounts. We buy VPNs, we use two-factor authentication. But if your nervous system is now a wireless network, what does your biological firewall look like?
Whoa.
How do you know if the anxiety you're suddenly feeling is yours or if it's just a bit of noise on the network? If we are permeable, how do we protect our own internal state?
Man, I'm going to be thinking about that all day. The idea of a biological firewall. And hey, while you're mulling that over, try to give yourself goosebumps. See if you can find that connection.
It might be the most important skill you learn in the 21st century, taking back control of your own admin privileges.
Thanks for diving deep with us. Stay curious, check your connection, and we'll see you on the next one.